What happens when we die? Do we ascend to another plane? Does the energy that made up our very being return to the earth that once cradled it? All that made up our experience of living, its highs, its lows, woven into an unending quilt beyond human perception. Birth, joy, tragedy, loss, love, sex, pizza, Little Caesars, absorbed into the porous memory banks of stone, of water? Or are we, as many televised ghost content posits, doomed to wander the earth as a specter, playing out a loop of our traumatic death for time immemorial? That is, until a man wearing a shirt with a bedazzled skull calls you a
you bird, you piece of
and you walk dejectedly into the light. My relationship with the paranormal, with ghosts, with spirituality is one centered around fun and experimentation. I have an E&M agreement with it, in which sometimes I'll, go on a ghost tour or buy a spirit box. But I also grew up with Catholicism pushed on me, so I have a general disdain for anything beyond our sorry place in the cold, logical dirt. I like spooky things, I like creepy things, and I'm of the mind that a suspension of disbelief is required to allow you to absorb such things, or it could be an inversion of that. The fact that you can experience this fear admits a sliver of belief, and it's that sliver widening into an opening from which light can peek through that you fear.
Keep an eye on the stuffed toy, as it moves exactly when Patty lifts the lid.
Holy shit. By a fucking button.
Patty and Heather didn't notice.
I thought you only drank Kickstart.
Oh, yeah. I'm kind of like starting a new arc. I don't have a whole lot going on, you know.
I see.
I have consumed so much paranormal content, so much so that you'd think I was a producer for the Travel Channel. For me, what this gave way to was a meta-anthropological appreciation for hosts and the format of paranormal content. At a certain point, the question of faith, doubt, belief, science, good, evil, all faded away, and what remained after years of consuming this content was the question, is this entertaining? Am I having a good time watching this? Why? Why not? Should I continue paying for Discovery Plus? What if they raised the price $1? Would I still do it? Well, I might, because there's honestly not enough people that think these shows are worth even pirating, so it's like, sometimes it's kind of the only option. At the end of the day, I want to believe, and honestly, I want that belief for you more than me. Ghost content peers into a world that becomes more and more real every day, a world where the lives of Americans, let's be honest, are so consumed by the stress, fear, and dread of other worlds and beings descending on them. Life is so complicated already. Wouldn't it be great if ghosts and demons were the cause of all our woes, our sorrows, and failed marriages? This may sound scarier to you, but at least it's got a name. At least there are ways to take up arms against it. These shows depict what is likely real, ignored mental illness as a physical altercation that makes sense to the uneducated. The important thing here is the reality doesn't matter. Whether or not I believe that a paranormal investigator actually communed with the dead is less important than, was it fun? Was it creepy? Was I intrigued? How outlandish are the gadgets and gizmos? God, you ever just wish somebody would look at you the way Zach looks at his gold beryllium microphone?
There's beryllium crystals placed on the inside. It's supposed to create its own magnetic field.
There is a specific piece of content that I want to examine, but in order to get there, I have to take a long, meandering path through a field pockmarked by numerous rabbit holes. My first instinct is to ensure to you that the next segment doesn't concern the central idea behind this video, but knowing myself, it will last long enough to ascend beyond merely an aside and will undeniably be part of the video. There are many forms the paranormal program can take, but one of the most common kinds is the ghost hunt reality show. There is no shortage of TV shows about a group of weirdos bumbling through the dark with night vision cameras, yelling obscenities into the echoing halls of America's most shameful historic sites. Arguably, the most culturally significant and popular of these has been Along with Ghost Hunters, which came about around the same time, it served as the blueprint, the gold standard of this type of thing, if you're into that and willing to admit it. I don't think any of this is refutable or controversial to say. What might be controversial is to say that I like the show, and I think it's good. There are so many things that make Ghost Adventures entertaining. For starters, it's certainly the funniest of them.
There's something in here wakes you up during the night and wanting sex with you. Have you heard of incubus haunting?
If you've never seen it, a paranormal investigator named Zach Bagans, and usually 2 or so underlings visit a supposedly haunted place with the pointed intention of antagonizing ghosts, provoking, in order to collect evidence.
Can you push that axe down on him?
Do you want to keep killing? Push this axe on my face.
Quite literally, being a jerk to them in hopes of getting a response. For Zach, sometimes this crosses into negging territory, but that's neither here nor there.
I want you to put your hands around my neck and squeeze. If I lay down, what are you gonna do to me?
Tickle.
So what do you want to do with us now that we're laying in the bed?
I have hands on my chest right now.
Let's set this right here in between my legs, because that's where I heard the incubus likes it the best.
Wait, technically you both got touched in the inner thigh, though.
Right. But mine was a female ghost.
How did you know it was a female?
Yeah, how did you know it was a female?
Can you jump in this bed with me and cuddle up with me? If you're female?
On top of this, they go into lockdown in this location. In truth, the locking down aspect is usually performative and could easily be circumvented via things like an open window.
Good luck.
Okay, thank you.
But the main thing is, they're going to stay overnight at the haunted place. Whether or not there's a lock on the front door means little to me, but they seem fixated on maintaining that credit.
He's locking us down the real way.
You notice that these windows are open, but I can't fit out of there.
I'd wager if there is one thing anyone knows about this show, even those that have never been bored in a hotel room in their life, is that the guy who's positioned himself as the main host was a near-perfect archetype of the millennial douchebag. Rarely do you find this pristine a specimen, as though any screenshot of him could build the starter kit for an obnoxious Y2K Las Vegas reality show personality. It's in his clear need to be the star, mugging the camera, staring it down like he's going to murder you, putting down his buddies, and engaging in frat bro pranks. It's in his ill-fitting, overly stylized and embellished shirts, outlandish belt buckles, and very, very, very wide pants. It's in his faux hawk and the way he desperately wants to fuck a ghost.
And you enjoy investigating prostitute hauntings?
Yes. Yeah.
All this is true, and for me, contributes to what made this show special. I speak of it as though it were dead at the time of my writing, as its initial incarnation is, at least. For a good 9 seasons and some change, Ghost Adventures excelled at one thing. Was it gathering compelling evidence of the paranormal?
Did you just speak?
Was it providing meaningful insight into the country's dark history?
4 children were hit in the face with an axe and killed in here. But he wasn't done yet.
Was it living up to the network's namesake and exploring interesting little-known destinations?
We're in Sugar Land, Texas.
We're at the Baker Hotel in Mineral Wells, Texas.
So right now we're in the middle of absolute nowhere, really, in Texas.
No, it excelled at being entertaining, simulating the experience of being with your buddies and trying to make content. All too often, the main goal of an episode is waylaid by some activity or bit that has nothing to do with ghost hunting, but would sure keep you awake at least. This is illustrated quite well in an early episode where Zach and the gang walk through a trail to get to the haunted location, and Zach says, "Boy, I hope there aren't any snakes here. I sure am afraid of snakes." Mere seconds later, a snake appears, and instead of running away from it, Zach chooses to face his fear, and he holds it like Pee Wee Herman fleeing a burning pet store. It's content-brained through and through, and they know what it would take to, at the very least, keep you engaged, even if it makes no fucking sense why what's happening is happening. Down to its ADD adult editing. Something is always happening. Doesn't have to be ghost hunting, but something. In 2014, as production was gearing up for the show's 10th season, there was a short-lived belief that Ghost Adventures would be coming to an end. From the future of 20, we know that they've made it well past 10 seasons. But what fed this rumor was the apparent division within the three hosts. Zach had taken time off to film a documentary called Demon House, and Nick Groff had announced his departure from the show to pursue his own Ghost Adventures clone. Aaron was, and I suppose it can be said always was, just vibing, unsure which friend to side with, and thus remaining with the one that was providing him a steady paycheck. And with little fanfare, with little pomp and circumstance, it happened. One day in the middle of a season, Nick's intro was just gone, replaced by two other guys, with nary a word on where he went. It's kind of like season 3 of Lost, where they just bring in new people like, yeah, this guy's always been here. What are you, fucking blind?
Nikki's dead. What the hell's Nikki?
My theory is that Zach resented Nick for having a child. Something that would just steal Nick's attention away from him.
Jay is stepping up while Nick is at home, welcoming the arrival of his new baby daughter.
Yeah, Jay stepped up. His heart's in this. You don't run with us anymore. It would be nearly a decade before we'd get a clearer glimpse behind Nick's exit from the show. But from the outside, what was plainly obvious was that many episodes of Ghost Adventures features Zach and Nick passive-aggressively fighting for the role of main character, with Nick almost always losing.
It's going up to a 20 and my arm
just grabbed my neck.
Oh, something just grabbed my arm too. Something just grabbed my arm.
Dude, it touched my neck again.
Check out this clip of Zach subtly putting Nick in his place, reminding him of the pecking order.
Maybe she's a Jane Doe.
I think that's a great idea. I think we should go in and
You ready, Aaron? And I got a couple of...
Where you going, camera boy? Back of the line.
There's a time in my life where I was very bitter and very angry about like the whole entire situation, to be honest with you. But like, I'm at a point in my life, I just don't care anymore.
What's wrong with you, Nick? What the f***'s wrong with him?
I don't know, but I got 1 minute of tape left.
Something that often gets buried in the presentation of Ghost Adventures because Nick was overshadowed by Zach, who positioned himself in front of the camera, in focus, the de facto leader, is that Nick was integral in the very inception of the show. He was fascinated by the paranormal since he was a child, and beyond wanting to make a documentary or a TV show, he just wanted to hunt ghosts with his friends. So he called upon his two friends, Aaron, who he knew from college, and Zach, who was at the time a wedding DJ, which is something that makes more sense than anything that could ever have made sense.
So what did I do? I called up Zach. I said, hey dude, you want to go look for ghosts?
There's an interview with Nick where he even describes the moment he chose to name their crew Ghost Adventures, something that Zach took ownership of at the start of every episode of Ghost Adventures.
And basically I said, man, it's ghosts and we're going on an adventure.
Though coining that name is far from the brag either would think. I mean, it's definitely one of those first draft names that you'd quickly throw out once thinking of anything else. Despite being, let's be honest, third on the call sheet, Nick probably cared about hunting ghosts and having adventures the most. I can only imagine Aaron was there to support his friend, and who's to say what Zach's priorities were?
Go to travelchannel.com and check out our encounters videos. You can check out and see what really happens during our lockdown.
So we're pulling up to one of these adult bookstores.
Glory room. Ready? Okay, put your camera away.
See, when Nick left Ghost Adventures, or per his interpretation, when he was ghosted by his castmates, he didn't make a stink about it. He didn't divide the show's fans by calling anyone out, he just internalized his pain and continued working on a number of ghost content ventures. The first of which was a bit of a mulligan, but it is going to be the thing I focus on for most of whatever this is. Nick would leave the halls of the Travel Channel in favor of Destination America, and the first project he'd try out was a quickly canceled Ghost Adventures-like called Ghost Stalkers. He would not appear in this show, but would produce and edit its 6 episodes. Following this, he'd participate in 2 more ghost hunting shows simultaneously, quickly positioning himself as the Bagans of Destination America, a virus, a little tick that's burrowed its way into my television. The most successful of these was Paranormal Lockdown, a pretty cut and dry ghost hunting road trip, in which he could be the main character, and he'd up the ante. Instead of staying overnight in a haunted place, he'd stay a full 72 hours in a haunted place, just to really put a strain on his editors.
Yeah, it says something bitch.
Paranormal Lockdown would last 4 seasons before falling victim to a purging of ghost content that I'll get to in a minute. Or not. What are you gonna do? Also Google it? The cancellation of the show did not slow down Nick Groff. He saw the change in the wind, jumping the ship and cutting the cord to produce his own completely autonomous online ghost hunting content with his Force-sensitive wife. It was only when another show he had nothing to do with was cancelled that Nick finally started to open up about his departure from Ghost Adventures a million years ago now. He was out, but this pulled him back, still out, but within orbit. In a 6-minute Twitter video, he goes over essentially the main burning questions fans have had for him this whole time, plus some fluff to make him look more relatable, I think, and totally over it and not bitter at all. It's there essentially to say that
I sleep in a big bed with my wife.
I'm way happier now. Tessa and I couldn't be happier. The baby is doing fantastic. Tessa and I are extremely happy with our life right now.
His explanation for leaving the show was essentially that he felt like they were scooting him away from the table, involving him less and less and making moves to replace him. He got tired of feeling this way, and once his contract was up, left. Which is a normal, boring answer, so I believe it.
And I kept being told, we don't need you at this next location. Then another week would go by, we don't need you at that location.
Nick's back at the hotel because he's tired. So Aaron and I are going to walk the same stars.
It makes far more sense to me that just your former friends would phase you out of their circle slowly over the course of several years.
Yeah, there was some talk on Twitter, and I think that ignited from individuals that were like, he's not a part of it, and tried to sweep me under the rug at a certain point.
I'm gonna kick this open in a second.
Zach says, anyone out there who gets fired from a job for doing bad things can't use said job as a resume of achievements. Total deception.
I never did, quote, a bad thing.
He goes on to say, please for one time in your life do something 100% original, and then continues to say, disgusted to see someone using our show name, Ghost Adventures, to keep promoting shows and himself that we want absolutely nothing to do with.
Multiple people in the industry reached out to me and stated Zach called them and told them not to work with me. After speaking with Dakota, I learned that these patterns have not stopped.
Nick is referring to Dakota Layden, one of the hosts of the ill-fated ghost hunting program Destination Fear, which also ran for 4 seasons on Travel Channel before the plug was pulled to the confusion of its cast and fan base. This series was one I didn't really get into. I found its young, conventionally attractive influencer aesthetic cast sort of obnoxious. It was very much the Zoomer iteration of Ghost Adventures, and frankly just made me feel old watching it.
People have been touched and even become physically ill from the entities that still remain on the grounds.
Yeah.
Whoa, dude.
10,000 people have died at this location.
Turn this thing around!
Means nothing to this narrative, just me inserting my opinion because I was feeling needy for a moment. What made this significant was that Destination Fear likely existed as a favor from Zach Bagans to Dakota Layden. In the 6th season of Ghost Adventures, the show held a contest to create a video mashup. The winner would appear on an actual ghost hunt. This contest would be won by an 18-year-old Dakota Layden, who was not only a fan of the show but had created several spot-on parodies of Ghost Adventures where he would play Zach.
Demonic activity. Looks like we found where Aaron's gonna be staying tonight.
When he appeared on the show with Zach, there was a pretty immediate, almost paternal chemistry there, and it was clear that this kid got what Ghost Adventures was.
My name is Dakota, and I am a lot hotter than Zach.
She knows the truth.
The crew must have agreed on that because post-Nick, he'd be brought in as a camera operator for a season, leading up to the premiere of his own show, Destination Fear.
Why are you standing here?
Because Dakota's got my camera.
Who?
Dakota.
Who are you?
I'm Dakota.
Just kidding. This guy right here is Dakota.
For the past few years, I've been investigating the paranormal with Zach Bagans and the Ghost Adventures crew.
Dakota Layden. Welcome, buddy.
Dakota inadvertently kicked off a spate of ghost hunter drama after he had announced that Destination Fear's 4th season would be its last.
The TV show Destination Fear has been canceled.
In a video that made the rounds to all his socials, he vaguely alludes to receiving a call that informed him that Zach Bagans was, contrary to his thinking, not responsible for the show not being renewed. Spoken with the air of someone with a financial gun to their head.
Does that mean that Zach and me are friends and that he's been supporting the show and everything has been chipper and great? No, it doesn't.
Here's Zach.
In the meantime, I'm talking to one of our people on the actual network side, and they say the same thing. Look, the issue isn't with anybody in the cast except for Nick. This guy made a phone call and basically said, look, I don't ever want to see him working on this network.
This is Bill Hartley. In 2016, he was one of 3 main hosts in a ghost hunting show called Ghosts of Shepherdstown on Destination America. This show was not very good, but you already knew that. The important thing is, one of the other hosts of this show was Nick Groff. Now, the problems the show faced were not uncharacteristic of a network reality TV series. It had a bizarre lifespan that was likely the result of inconsistent committee think. It was meant to be a 1-season one-off, but its ratings were alright, so they wanted another one. The gang reconvened, and they did all this all over again, and that was fine. After season 2, there was a network merger between Discovery and Scripps, making Travel Channel and Destination America sister networks, which seemingly fucked over a fair number of these silly little shows. So you could easily chalk the show's cancellation up to getting lost in the shuffle of consolidated garbage content. But seeing as you've gotten a bit of a peek behind the Affliction shirt and have a better idea of the kind of guy Zach Bagans is, how do you think he'd feel if at the end of this merger, Ghosts of Shepherdstown starring Nick Groff and Paranormal Lockdown starring Nick Groff and Ghost Stalkers, executive produced and edited by Nick Groff, would be under the same roof as Ghost Adventures starring Zach Bagans, and Zach fucking Bagans?
Who you waving to, dude? You waving to us?
A particular, let's just say, douchebag in glasses decided that he didn't want to work on a network with a former cast member. He then, apparently, made a phone call to network and said, look, it's my way or the highway. I am not not going to be on the same area as this guy.
Firing these guns. Killing.
All this is, of course, hearsay, allegations, rumors, friend of a friend says, but neither reality would really surprise me or affect my affinity for this dillweed. Wouldn't be the first toxic relationship I couldn't shake, and I'll be damned if it's the last. To conclude the tea spilling section of this video, my read of this situation is that, God love him, Zach doesn't come out looking too good. Not just because he seems like a petty and insecure person,
8 people hacked to death while they sleep,
but he comes out looking like the Kirk Van Houten of this standoff. He's the one in the race car bed, called network TV. Nick Groff and Dakota Layden seem to have bounced back just fine, diverting their passion for the paranormal into a new digital age, while Ghost Adventures languishes on a dying platform for the dying. If I didn't know any better, I'd say both expertly manipulated this situation to their benefit, clickbaiting you with probably real beef to say, by the way, I have a YouTube channel now, and I got nothing but respect for that.
Welcome to the Fear Fam.
As a supernatural power couple, both of our abilities revolve around communicating with the dead.
So if we could rewind back to Nick's first moments of creative freedom, I was drawn to Ghost Stalkers because, well, through random chance I watched an episode of it and needed to know more about why it existed. But what I realized in consuming all this ghost shit and ghost piss and ghost cum, I'm fascinated by what makes a show like this work from a purely format entertainment sense, and it does seem like Nick was taking his experience with Ghost Adventures and wandering, looking for a place to do the thing he liked to do without compromise. And this one was a pretty immediate, nope, that doesn't work. This is the series I'd like to focus on. Ghost Stalkers aired on Destination America in 2014 for a whopping 6 episodes before the plug was pulled. And I think it's an interesting study in what works and doesn't work with shows like this. Despite Groff's name being attached to it, no Ghost Adventures regulars would appear on it. Instead, 2 new challengers to the space would emerge in Chad Lindbergh and John Tenney. The latter would wind up on Paranormal Lockdown, but nonetheless, 2 wildly different hosts with wildly mismatched energy. If you're as late 90s, early 2000s TV brain-rotted as I, you may recognize Chad Lindbergh. While it can be said that, in a way, most people who would appear on a show such as this are actors, Chad was and still is more officially an actual actor of the TV character variety, appearing as bit characters in a number of shows I like, such as Buffy, The X-Files, and Supernatural.
What? Closing time.
This seems like some kind of paranormal gray area to me, to assign a known, documented actor the role of a ghost hunter, wherein one of your main concerns as producer must be the chance that the viewer scoffs and says, nah, this guy's faking it. Much like stand-up comedy, it's one of those roles that falls apart if you don't seem like a genuine person or you just abandon comedy in place of transphobic TED Talks. Which way, funny man? On the outset, not the first person you'd expect to be part of a ghost hunting duo, but soon their connection will be revealed.
I think that ghosts are all around us, spirits are all around us. But we really don't think about it. I felt it touch me, and this is how you're gonna know that I'm here. They pull, they scratch, you know what I mean?
In contrast to Chad Lindbergh, John Tenney is a man deeply ingrained in the world of the paranormal. He's gone far down the rabbit hole, and has been for some time, considering himself something of a paranormal, conspiratorial, and occult historian, sometimes an anomalistic researcher. He would go on to appear in a number of similar shows like Paranormal State and Kindred Spirits, but prior to Ghost Stalkers, he was in sort of the old guard of this kind of programming. Shows like Unsolved Mysteries and Sightings. He's got a storied history with the paranormal that began with writing for magazines, newspapers, and blogs.
So does God exist?
Unlike other ghost or cryptid hunting shows, this was not just a group of friends with a shared interest. These two were, as the introduction suggests, brought together by their near-death experience. Both of them, at different points in their life, were clinically dead for just the right amount of time before your brain melts completely, then resuscitated. In John's case, having experienced a kind of profound vision of a hellish afterlife.
Now, you have claimed to died.
The show's intro immediately makes it clear that Ghost Stalkers is not a carbon copy of similar shows. I mean, that is the network's intention. The show is very much still that, but it's got these 2 ingredients that are meant to result in something with a distinct flavor. I don't know if it does that or if they are simply garnish around an already tired concept. They have the thing where they both almost died. Okay, fine. As simply lore, I can accept that. But less than a minute into the episode, we're already using a word that will beat underneath the surface of this series, and that word is
portals.
Portal. Portals. Portals.
Portal. Portal. Portal.
Portal. Portal. Portals.
Portals.
Portals. Portals. Portal. Portal.
Portal. Portals. Portal.
Portal. Portal.
Portal.
Portal. Portal. Portal. Portal.
These two believe that hauntings are the result of portals to another dimension. So the format is altered slightly in that they aren't only looking for the classics, you know, cold spots, orbs, EVPs, though all that is still a part of it. Their concern is the source, the spawn point for entities. The first of the 6 45-minute episodes attempts to quickly acclimate you to the format. Our guys are introduced, and already we're on the road to Haunted Location 1, a place called Whispers Estate in Mitchell, Indiana, reported to be one of the most haunted places in the United States. We don't even make it out of the RV before John just starts explaining portals. He approaches the appearance of ghosts in this vague metaphysical sense, almost like he doesn't even believe in ghosts so much as unexplainable phenomena resulting from a portal.
So you've seen actual ghosts?
I don't know if they're ghosts.
I personally think this is a lot to ask of the type of person that would watch this show. It's a headier concept than ghost, which we all understand. So thankfully, they also consult 2 local paranormal investigators that describe stories from Whispers Estate that are in line with what you'd hope for. Disembodied voices, scratches, full body apparitions, a sense of looming dread, the lore we know.
I believe wholeheartedly that there's a portal in this house.
Okay, hang on. I was following you for a second there. But you guys are in on this whole portal thing as well? Wow. I didn't know we were all just doing portals now. The word portal has been said so many times already, and it's so baffling. I'm trying to work out how this came to be because no other ghost hunting show says the word portal this many times. It happens. Sure, I've heard a few shows talk about, you know, a goth teen using a spirit board to wish revenge on a school bully and then their abusive parent burns it, leaving a portal to hell open, per my interpretation, of course. But I don't usually hear that brought up as the main objective. There's something funny about the cinematic flair of this show. It's like a scripted film, the way our leads are nervously chatting about the job that lay ahead of them.
Very nervous about this place. There's something about it that's just crazy.
But really, the guy answering the door is the owner of a tourist trap. This isn't some unassuming house in the middle of nowhere that you received a panicked phone call from. This is a place you can visit during operating hours and stay overnight for hundreds of dollars.
There's supposed to be a vortex that comes up in this corner of the house.
A vortex? Is that like a portal? Man, I guess I never considered portals this much.
I'm doing this. I feel extremely dizzy in this location. I'm rocking.
This is classic. What am I gonna say? You're not rocking? I'm not you. I can't feel what you feel. I can only say that, look, I feel about a dozen things daily when I'm like, hang on, is this supposed to be doing that? Is this cancer? Is this a growth? What's happening to me? If I had to then consider the possibility of a portal to hell every time I felt dizzy, then fuck, why go on? Just build that anti-demon bunker from Supernatural and slowly go insane. The owner of the house breezes by 2 insane coincidences in a matter of seconds. That's just more shit that ain't ghosts that we have to integrate into our understanding. The foundation of the building is limestone, and it may be along a ley line. Ley lines are some old school esoteric pseudoscience that I can't imagine the average ghost enjoyer is drunk enough on the Kool-Aid to be interested in. It's like an old spotty archaeological theory about there being straight lines connecting significant historic sites.
Yes, I'm a very, very big believer in ley lines.
But that idea was soon taken further into the fringe and granted some spiritual significance.
So here we have an ancient grid structure, probably built by extraterrestrials.
It's glossed over so quickly, like why even bring it up?
And then there's reportedly ley lines in this area.
The owner then goes into the historic records of the house. It apparently belonged to a doctor of obstetrics and women's diseases. This doctor apparently adopted a bunch of children that all died along with his wife, and he went insane with grief. The owner then goes on about some of the injuries guests have sustained and some details of things witnessed, such as a goat man. Don't get excited. This never comes up again and certainly doesn't throw anyone 20 feet or make Zach have a panic attack. All you know is he's here and he's fucking shredded.
Did you see it?
As far as haunted location backstories, it's got just about all you could want, right? Suspiciously so, even.
The vortex, it's supposed to come up into this corner of the room as well.
People see stuff up in the attic, so, you know, I think it's like a really long portal that extends down all the floors of the building. Like, you got no idea where this thing is, do you? He just points to a corner of the first floor. Like, yeah, so here's where the vortex is, and then Chad's getting dizzy on the opposite side of the room. I'm just trying to get my bearings here. John is a well-spoken, intelligent guy. He's a writer, and whenever he talks about the paranormal, he gives it an extra layer of obfuscation. He doesn't like the standard vocabulary and lore behind ghost hunting. In his eyes, this very well could not be a ghost at all, just a doorway in which beings from another place have entered. A crack in reality, allowing a glimpse into dimensions wider and weirder than they could imagine. And Chad says stuff like this.
There's like a half man, half goat. Like, what is that?
Right.
Like, what is that?
Which makes it all the more jarring that he handles the majority of the show's overly serious voiceover.
Could it be the tormented and twisted soul of Dr. John and the spirits of his family that are responsible for all the mayhem?
The tone of the show itself is very serious, down to its dramatic color grading, and I think that damages it considerably. One thing shows like Ghost Adventures and even Ghost Hunters nails is the inherent absurdity and spontaneity in what they're doing. They know this activity is a hobby. It's neat. It would be neat if they heard a loud noise out of nowhere and it spooked them. Dude, did you just hear that? Holy shit, dude. I swear to God. I saw a face right over there, bro. I swear to
I just saw a face right here and it looked at me and it was glowing.
Are you serious?
And it turned and it looked at me. And it was right here, man. It was so cool.
The philosophical implications behind it aren't going to keep them up at night. Although apparently they have destroyed marriages, so that's unfortunate.
Do you think that investigating Bobby Mackey's music world was a factor in ruining your marriage?
I believe it's probably an 80% factor, yes.
So before we've even seen our leads do any kind of traditional ghost hunting, they invite another guy over. All they've done so far is talk about portals, and Chad has been physically punched in the stomach.
Something happened to.
I almost go down, and the whole crew, everybody was like, "Holy shit, you okay? Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I just got punched."
Are you okay?
And already they're calling a guy in a cowboy hat for help. What's this guy got that they don't?
David's wormhole detector can pinpoint portal openings as they occur by measuring environmental fluctuations.
Oh. They keep teasing a real ghost hunt, but now they've got a wormhole detector that reads fluctuations in gamma radiation. I'm a dying grandfather. I've got severe unaddressed PTSD. I've got kids that don't talk to me anymore. I got a pickup truck with a Let's Go Brandon bumper sticker, and I don't know what any of this shit means. Sometimes I swear it's a word salad of manifesting energies and entities.
So as we're collecting data information about all this stuff, we have to look at every possibility of what could be manifesting the energy that's creating these wormholes or portals.
Absolutely.
David is the show's third ingredient, not advertised on the box. He's the technology consultant, but I'd wager he had a lot more to do with the creation of ghost stalkers than is apparent. He's got the air of someone who knows what they're talking about, even though what we're talking about is ghosts. The show doesn't spend any time going over the bona fides of David, the owner of the wormhole detector. So I spent some time looking him up, and I feel like I suddenly know too much about this guy. But I will say, I don't think he's putting on an act. I think of the people in this room, David is the most confident that there is a wormhole in this room. If there's one thing I've learned about him, it's that he's really interested in using science and technology to understand imaginary things, and he thinks this wiggly oscilloscope is telling them something. I was compelled to look into him because he seems like such a character. He's got a vibe that says, I do this all the time. This is my third wormhole detecting of the day. So I was surprised to learn that despite being a certified ghost head since the 70s, not only was this his only TV appearance that I could find at least, but around 2016, he quit the business of paranormal research altogether. In his own words, the paranormal field had become a circus of carnival clowns, more interested in fame and fortune, and little interest in science and finding answer. The current landscape of everything is demonic, and blinky lights means a ghost is present. I retired. This was his second to last post on his blog, with the final one being about his divorce. It is clear that David saw the field he loved becoming perverted by silly guys running around through condemned buildings with night vision cameras.
I know you're in here. I can hear you.
So I can only imagine he was drawn to ghost stalkers because they took an active interest in portals. If you look at nearly anything he's written on the subject, it's nigh incomprehensible to the average ghost enjoyer. Before the announcement of his retirement, the previous post begins with, "I will be doing my first attempt at artificially opening a wormhole this weekend, using a process I call the tri-resonance effect, which, if my interpretation of Tesla's work is correct, will set up a null field in which local reality will collapse in on itself, causing a waveform collapse and generating a possible wormhole formation. I will also be employing aspects of Casimir effect phenomena. What could possibly go wrong? In quantum field theory, the Casimir effect and the Casimir polar force are physical forces arising from a quantized field. They are named after the Dutch physicist Hendrik Casimir. The process I will be using incorporates specially tuned quartz crystals with specific resonances and 3 high-energy Tesla coils tuned to specific resonances." That was his spelling. I don't know if that's like a term I don't know or a typo. Even his bio on Amazon, which is no doubt written by him, just devolves into pseudoscientific brain-melted word salad. You know, they go over all of his interests, his normal human things, and then he is also experimenting with injecting energy into a paranormal event horizon using Tesla coil technology in order to observe and record the effects. He continues to measure the effects of massive ion bombardment in a paranormal environment. He is developing a device designed to capture and analyze the phenomena referred to as orbs in order to either prove or dismiss their existence. David is also experimenting with a self-designed ITC interdimensional transcommunications device using electromagnetic field propagation as a medium of cross-communication. Yeah, alright. Sick, dude. What do you do when you're being normal? The 3 of them invite the home's caretaker into the wormhole room and ask if she'd talk to it. This causes them to pog out when the oscilloscope makes a funny shape.
Did you see it was almost? Did you see there was almost like a square?
And then there is this lovely moment where they fail to finish each other's sentence concerning what is happening.
Data that's showing us that human beings
have an effect,
are an integrated part.
Chad's role is more visceral than the others. I don't think they bring up the term, but he's doing a thing that I think you'd associate with being a sensitive.
I feel extremely dizzy. Yeah, no, I just felt a pain in my chest. I feel like if I open myself up just a little bit, it's going to hurt me. I feel so nauseous right now. I'm just having a very visceral reaction to this place. And I feel also very aggro. I felt like I was constantly being poked, prodded, touched, punched.
You all right?
No.
No?
Like
what are
I
you
was
feeling?
just got really negative. I don't feel good in here. I don't feel good at all.
His contributions a lot of the time are, guys, I don't feel so good. I am just being assaulted with energy right now. It's like there's a million eyes and they're kicking my ass. Finally, it's nightfall, and our guys are preparing for lockdown, and initially it sounds nearly identical to the format of Ghost Adventures. It's standard stuff, but a crucial difference that separates the tone and intention of this series lies in how they approach that lockdown. John and Chad will alternate between being alone in the haunted place and alone in the RV, meaning Chad will spend the night alone in the place while John monitors him from the RV. Then they switch places the following night. It's around here that I realized the grim and severe atmosphere of the series was just there to stay. I wrongly assumed because I had seen Chad play goofy characters that he'd be the comedic half of an entertainment duo, but he's immediately not doing okay once he steps into the house alone. He throws up before even leaving the RV. John gives him a panic button and consoles him by explaining that in order for something to appear from a portal, it has to sap the energy from something, which means Chad is really strong, which is very sweet of him to big him up in terms he'll appreciate. But he could also just be very unwell. As soon as he's on the Whispers Estate couch, attempting to record some EVP, he is visibly nervous and barely stammers out a few sentences before his words just devolve into brain-broken musings.
Being human is weird. Right?
He plays back his recording and hears a voice say, "Chad, be a man," which seems to profoundly affect him.
All right. I will.
Now, I'm not jaded enough to accuse this actor of acting. Honestly, I think Chad's fear in these haunted places, as over the top and occasionally funny as it can be, could also be genuine, unlike the contents of any of the crystal clear EVP recordings they collect. It wouldn't surprise me that someone, especially someone who believes in the paranormal, would be afraid of staying alone in a place that they were just told was profoundly haunted in a million different ways. I consider myself a non-believer to the point of near nihilism, but there will always be that primitive part of my brain that reacts to certain things I don't immediately understand with fear, with a fight or flight response. So I could see myself being in Chad's shoes and his variety of accessories and being unnerved. I'm not going to debate what someone finds scary. What I do find interesting is the choice of this as a focal point of Ghost Stalkers. Our host's discomfort, fear, and emotional distress really betrays fun. But that's the thing, that may be what I'm looking for in this kind of show, but I'm not so sure that the intention behind Ghost Stalkers was to be fun. I think they took this subject matter as gravely serious as they could, thinking the entertainment of it would be that watching Chad and John freak out would be unnerving, or that looking at a screen with wiggly lines would cause you to furrow your brow and mutter, concerning. But to me, the horror of it all is just kind of sad, because I know there is so much around the production of a reality ghost show that is, well, to put it very, very kindly, fake. A fabrication. But real or not, it does seem like these two are legitimately being scared, and so often Ghost Stalkers just feels like a cruel prank show that never has its tension cut. Nobody ever steps out and says, "Good job, Chad. You survived our torture. Now here's a giant novelty check." There's no feeling of camaraderie or friendship either, because the two hosts are separated for much of the show. You don't get much time to see them interact or build a rapport. It's just them squirming in discomfort and becoming emotional in green vision, while every now and then cutting back to the one in the RV saying,
"I'm so concerned with Chad."
What's he doing?
It's odd knowing that Chad can be this silly over-the-top personality, and he's clearly incredibly easy to scare, and that is such a perfect concoction for entertainment. Like, there are countless content creators and Twitch streamers that have expertly played into that to great success, but there is something so humorless about it in this show.
What the f*** is that?
John is the more confrontational of the two. He'll occasionally attempt to provoke or agitate ghosts. I mean, he's no Zach Bagans, but he does his best.
"I've heard rumors that they open these doors to let you out. Well, I'm coming in."
In the first episode, this results in him claiming he was pushed into a wall and scratched down his back, and it's treated with the severity of a cancer diagnosis. He sets up a confessional cam and tells Chad not to worry about him, and he seems genuinely emotionally affected by this experience. And fuck, man, I think if an intelligent, invisible force did that to me, I might feel the same. That might be a heavy experience to reckon with. Compare it to any time someone gets scratched in Ghost Adventures, and it's a stark vibe change.
What is it?
Stop moving.
Okay, scratch. What is it?
It's a scratch.
What is it?
But this also has a sort of narrative significance, if you will, because John, outside of this show, claims to have glimpsed another world during his near-death experience, and the world he saw was a world of evil and pain and suffering, and based on his closing statements for this episode, I think this was meant to be him confirming that that other world is real and he can interact with it, and there are goatmen there. Episode 2 falls into a classic ghost hunting folly, the in poor taste ghost hunt, where paranormal research clashes with dark tourism. The producers end up having to walk a line between respecting the severity of a location's history while still being an entertaining spooky show.
One of America's most notorious insane asylums, the complex became a dumping ground for Maryland's unwanted mentally ill women. Barbaric treatment, physically assaulted, inhumanely neglected, patient abuse, maltreatment of people, sadness. Super excited about this site.
Me too.
Now I will say, as far as examples of this go, because Ghost Stalkers has this professional, sobering aesthetic, it's actually not the worst example of this.
There was an inmate that was gang to death.
You know where this is going? Where?
I'm going in there.
You know it. Our gift to you is Aaron.
Dude.
I mean, at the end of the day, after all the maudlin reflecting on the sins of our fathers, we're still gonna send two dum-dums with night vision cameras into it to yell at their own shadows. It's such a horrific, shameful thing. There's really no way you can talk about it without seeming insensitive to it, just by the very nature of what your television program is. David returns, and he's got a new idea on how to detect wormholes, a better one than his wormhole detector. They're gonna bombard a room with lasers in a grid, and then pump smoke into the room and watch for movement within it. This, of course, doesn't result in anything all that interesting for now, but Chad is once again feeling sick.
I feel like this room is just using my body as a Raggedy Ann doll. I've been feeling weird and just like aggro. My body is just all over the map and I feel like and dizzy and like just like I have to get out of here and sweaty.
And then experiences a scratch of his own. And this is more in line with the content I like. He's not broken by this experience, he's freaked out by it, but also sort of excited. He cracks a bit of a smile and wants to get the investigation underway.
No, I think now is the perfect time to do what we do.
At this moment, he's channeling Bagans. One thing Ghost Adventures does that I love, especially early on, is leave in these candid, goofy moments where maybe they get scared by something dumb that's obviously not a ghost.
What the? Yeah! That was awesome! Did you get that?
Or one of them trips over something in the dark.
Oh! You alright, dude?
What did I just run into?
A butterfly, and when we... What are you...
Oh, you okay, man?
Ouch, 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 ouch. You alright? Ouch.
Even if there are mistakes, they often just leave them in because it happened in the moment and it's funny. But that's not to say the show isn't edited well. It knows how to make use of the footage they have, and they'll add in some music and sound effects and B-roll to keep energy up. Sometimes they go overboard with like strobing and zooming to where it's like genuinely concerning. Like that might not be safe.
What are you doing? These are our Ghost Adventures.
But in Ghost Stalkers, I think it's very consistent, but it's edited in this simple, slow documentary style. There will be lots of quiet, uncut moments where you just hear creaking footsteps, the host breathing, and the plastic crackling of the shell of the camera being handled.
I heard you. Okay. I just heard footsteps.
This time, John heads into the haunted place first, and Chad watches from the RV. A lot of what he experiences are just random taps and knocks that could result from one of a million sources in a sprawling turn-of-the-century complex in ruin. Animals, weather, the slightest atmospheric change even. The check-in camera they set up so the two can talk to each other mysteriously shuts down, so all the cuts back to Chad are just him complaining about that. Unsurprisingly, once it's his turn to go in, things get more exciting on account of his strong reactions to just about anything. The first thing he does is attempt an EVP session that he can barely get through.
Something's just...
I find it interesting that Chad's play is to ask the ghosts about portals by name.
Which part of the building do I need to go to find a portal?
Like, do you think dead people know what portals are? I don't know, maybe it's my own bleak outlook bleeding through, but I'd imagine being a ghost would make you this concentrated ball of heightened emotion and memory. stuck in a loop. It's a reel of film containing your greatest trauma locked, spinning on its spool, despite the picture going dark long ago. My point is, you can't just introduce new concepts to them. It creates this weird reaction in me where I realize how far I'm allowing myself to become invested in this world of make-believe. I'll be watching a ghost hunter show and some asshole will go to like an ancient Native American burial ground with a digital recorder and say, "Can you speak into this digital recorder? Tell me your name." Leaping to this assumption that whoever is there both understands English and can guess what a digital recorder might be.
I don't even know if they understand English or not. Can you talk? Talk and speak into here. Talk. Speak.
There's always a way to sidestep this in these spaces though. It's easy to just add an asterisk to something goofy. I'm sure a high-level grifter could say something like, "The spirits, they don't listen to the words, it's the intention behind them. They pick up on your desire for communication." This is a complete aside, but I wonder if they have a specific kind of night vision camera and lighting combo that makes the show look like this, or if they just color corrected it in post to be black and white and cranked up the contrast, because it actually makes it look on and off atmospheric and then funny. Chad is just isolated in a black void, yet pounded by so much harsh light that you can barely make out his facial features at certain points. He looks like a fucking cryptid.
I just heard a voice. I wonder if it could be the voice of a deranged spirit, once locked away in a confinement cell, hidden deep beneath the hospital.
Okay, Chad, let's remember the people that were stuck here were likely victims of horrible treatment. Let's compose ourselves a bit. Also, I don't know, I guess it's scary to walk around a place you don't know in the dark, but it's also a condemned building, and you're in Maryland, which is home to at least 8 species of owls that all probably make creepy, uncanny noises. The end of this episode really exemplifies the clashing of vibes in this series because Chad starts going nuts. He just does not have the constitution to do what he's doing, and it would be funnier if he showed some kind of humility about it all, but that never comes. He just seems really rattled and afraid the whole time, to where I feel sort of bad for him. I don't get why this was entirely necessary. I feel like both of you could be in there at the same time, or you could have given him a walkie so there's an open line of communication. You're killing this man. The crowning piece of evidence from this portal hunt is this slightly morphed laser light that I literally blinked and missed, so good thing they zoomed in and replayed it a few times.
See it?
Yeah.
One more time. Right there.
Yeah.
Right there. And it seems to me that the people that died here, the people that passed on, all are moving through these portals in these buildings, going from one building to the next, maybe using the tunnels to even act as a subway.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Spirits are absolutely using portals as a subway system? That's absolutely happening? Absolutely?
Hello?
I don't know if it was an intentional thing to play into both their backstories, having both died in a hospital, but they once again visit a haunted hospital. This time just a regular old hospital that was shut down for being old.
I was diagnosed with Rye syndrome, and the doctor told my parents that I was gonna die. For some reason I lived, and come to find out there were several kids in the hospital that had Rye syndrome, and they died. I'm still here.
Hey,
The time I spent.
Chad said, skill issue. I'm sorry, I feel like the lighting has gotten more and more insane. This is some Supernatural Season 1 shit. The contrast is so extreme, and now it's green? Oh, it's not anymore. What is going on here? A ghost edited this. Like the last location, this is another one where the property manager is making the best of a ridiculous investment by opening it up specifically to paranormal investigators and tourists. The previous manager even clarified, like, I cannot sell this. Nobody wants a creepy old building that would be too expensive to renovate, and even bulldozing it would be more hassle than it's worth. I guess it's a pretty good sign of how much disposable income ghost hunters have that they single-handedly keep places like this in operation.
The time I spent in the hospital was terrible. You know, I died, but I have this memory of a place between between the closing of the eyes and the opening of the eyes. And the place that I was in was a nightmare.
Are we not, like, curious why John saw that? You know what I mean? I mean, 99% of people who have near-death experiences describe a pretty stock set of visuals as part of their brain dies off. And it's usually a tunnel of light, maybe a flurry of random memories, maybe thoughts of a lost loved one, things like that. So I find it downright peculiar that John saw what sounds like the other highway.
There's already this preconceived notion that when we die, we're going back to the place where we originated from.
Is it the same doorway? Birth, death.
Ashley just sitting there like, so do I get paid in a check or?
Does that shadow?
Oh yeah. Yeah. Is that the only time that someone's seen something like that?
No. Cool. Thank you for sharing. Thank you.
This is far from the first show I've seen that point out the heaviness of a place like a hospital. That it is, in a more realistic sense, a gateway of life and death. People die there, people undie there. But this may be the first time I've heard it repeated a million times in the span of 10 minutes.
After showing us where so many lives exited this world, Ashley takes us just steps away to where many lives entered it.
How long can we philosophize on this? Like, I get it.
Everyone that was ever born and died went through this hospital.
Life, death, makes portal. Just get down in the basement and crawl around. Get scared, you fuck. David Roundtree returns with a new gizmo that will reveal nothing about portals, and this time the emphasis is on gamma radiation. It's apparently widely believed in the small sliver of fringe scientist weirdos that follow this sort of thing that a burst of gamma radiation is indicative of a portal to another realm opening, so they get a little detector that beeps whenever that happens. But, just as a treat, we get to see David do his favorite thing, attempt to simulate the opening of a portal using a Tesla coil. So after charging the room with electricity, he fires up a fog machine to look for any vortexual activity, just any circular movement, which of course they will see. Like, what other outcome is there? Alright, the experiment is this. I'm gonna throw a beryllium cube into a lake, and if it produces more than 3 circular ripples, then that means I'm gonna go to heaven. I feel like this is entirely a personal feeling, but it's around here that they cross a line, because before, yeah, they talked about portals a lot, but it was mostly in a theoretical sense. Oh yeah, this is definitely the environment where a portal could form, or this vague, wishy-washy piece of non-evidence indicates that there may be an atmospheric differential from one side of the room to the other, and thus, right? Did
it pop into reality through a portal and then pop back out?
But when they cut back from commercial, John just says,
Chad and I have discovered a mysterious portal at the Old Taylor Memorial Hospital in Hawkinsville, Georgia.
I guess we're just saying it now, huh? I mean, congrats. Way to go. Like, who do we call someone, or do we call the president? John goes in first, and for a while he tries for EVP and gets nothing. So he just kind of does a Tesla coil experiment out of boredom.
I've decided to one-up the morning's experiment and inject 50,000 volts of electricity not into the air, but into myself.
He hears some tapping sounds that, like, I guess I can't argue those aren't unexplained noises. Noise happened, I don't know where it came from. I guesses, but I can't say for certain. Once again, now that it's time for an easily frightened person to enter the scene, things are about to pop off.
I'm officially in the incinerator room. Scared out of my
I just noticed that this isn't the first or last time that it seems like Chad has captured an EVP that is saying his name.
Right there.
And, look, it must be such a burden as a ghost hunter to have your name be something that can be heard in even your own breathing. Like, if I just exhaled into a shitty little recorder, I bet it could sound a bit like I said, Chad.
It said my name. I think it said my name.
I think you should play it safe and assume that you just misheard static until you hear it audibly say,
That attention disorder. Or ADD? Yes,
that shit.
The centerpiece of this episode, and probably the wildest thing that happens in this show period, involves a clip that I initially had no reaction to. On the first watch, it just kind of came and went, and I squinted to make sense of what they were looking at before shrugging and saying, guys, this is getting sad. Then I watched it a few dozen times. Then I turned up the brightness and watched it a few more times. Then it sat with me for a while. I showed it to some other people so I could gauge their response to it. And honestly, it's still sort of baffling. Like, I still don't know how I feel about it, and by extension how I feel about Chad and John and even Nick Groff. It's like if this was real, this is hugely significant, you know? Look, I'll just play it for you, and I want you to keep an open mind. I want you to tap into your imagination and allow some suspension of disbelief.
It seems to be headed right for Chad, and I have no way to warn him.
Okay, now, take a journey with me here. Listen to the muzzled voice of whimsy within you. Wonder, for a second, could this clip be showing irrefutable proof of a 3D guy in his underwear? I get no enjoyment out of taking apart a ghost gag in one of these shows. I'm not trying to explain to you how the sausage was made here, because that's not fun to me. In fact, that's the opposite of why I watch these shows. Doing that would be tantamount to some smarmy doofus complaining about how fake wrestling is. Like, yeah, no shit. Now just watch these slabs of meat whack each other with folding chairs.
And drink a beer. Drink another beer. 3 beers. 4 beers. A Coke Zero. A White Monster. A handful of jelly beans. A big old box of rocks. Just a whole handful of dirt and hair and shit.
Yeah, so the only reason I single this out is the sheer boldness. It's bold in a way that first era Ghost Adventures was not. I have this theory that Nick was kind of Zach's rock, his anchor, and once he left, he was unmoored, untethered. It's a near immediate turn to Dark Zach. You can see it in the smallest interactions.
Right now I'm standing on the very railroad tracks where this legend states that a school bus full of little children were all instantly killed when a speeding train sliced right through the center of it.
Okay, again, right now we're with Richard Sennett, and he's taken us over to the Padres quarters. And over here, this is where you actually saw a greyhound dog.
But I think you could say Ghost Adventures never did this. They kept it to things you can't really refute because they're personal experiences.
Just like this hole that...
Did you hear that?
What the was that?
This guy is something else altogether.
Holy.
You can cross over!
Episode 4 is set in a historic prison, known simply by being noticeably worse than our other already inhumane prisons. I do have to point out that they do seem to minimize the horror that took place there into concepts the viewer won't question.
There's been a lot of riots, murders, suicides.
Okay, but that's not really what this prison was known for. I think it may have been the human medical experiments, where a mad scientist would offer inmates money for parole defense if they let him inject mystery substance 11 into them. Not too surprising that they then interview people who worked as prison guards there and ask them how horrible it was for them having to deal with flickering lights and the ghostly sound of footsteps behind them.
You always heard gates banging. Lights would flicker on and off. That's some scary.
I don't know why, but I kept rewinding this thing that John says here. It's like something about it wasn't right.
Many people believe that a critical mass of negative human energy can punch a hole from our world into a darker dimension, giving tormented spirits a pathway to pass between various realities.
Many people believe that a critical mass of negative human energy can punch a hole from our world to a darker dimension, giving tormented spirits a pathway to pass between various realities. I guess I just don't know if that's true. Like, do many people believe that a critical mass of negative human energy can punch a hole from our world to a darker dimension, giving tormented spirits a pathway to pass between various realities? It seems like a pretty specific and niche idea. I think it would be safer to say many people get bad vibes from a place. And this place? The vibes? bad.
My dad's been a cop for over 30 years.
Cringe.
I'm curious to see how the spirits of the prisoners react to me. Are they going to respond to me in a negative way, or are they going to respond to me and respect me?
Yes, those imprisoned by cops, famous cop son respecters. Look, if I play into the portal lore they've constructed here, I can see how this would be an interesting example. It's a man-made structure that funnels misery from 10 hallways into that central panopticon, and it makes me wonder if the crew is indeed seeking out locations that sound like they could house wormholes, rather than searching by hauntings. This is the first episode where it feels intentional, that the point of coming here was indeed to play with a Tesla coil and talk about how limestone can hold an electric charge. I simply refuse to believe this is a viable idea for a successful garbage TV show. This time around, they all seem to be in immediate agreement that there's a portal here and it's wide open perpetually. They don't introduce any new gadgets, so it's the same thing where they zap the air and watch for squiggly lines. While it's still daylight, they make Chad go into the center room and yell at it.
Time to lock down! Get back in your cell! I said, get back in your cell!
Holy shit, he is a cop. He's starting to believe. Chad is the first to spend the night there, and he opens by addressing the ghosts and announcing that he comes with respect, which is a really funny thing to say after you yelled at them to get back in their ghost cells and listened to a guard tell a story about an inmate dying in front of him without ever learning their name or the circumstances that caused their death. I doubt anyone knew why half these people were here.
I may not agree with how you got here, but I respect you.
We have no respect for you guys!
I feel like Chad's family connection to law enforcement has filled him with unearned confidence this episode, and he's not immediately broken by the oppressive atmosphere. Oh, never mind. He does, however, insist on asking them about portals, which I honestly just feel would be unproductive.
I'm here to see if there really are portals to the other side. In what part of the prison is the portal? If this is a portal to hell, slam a door! Am I sitting in a portal?
Once his static camera's battery dies, that initial hint of boldness he had crumbles. He looks terrified. For the rest of the night, he's constantly looking around over his shoulder and screaming at every little sound. It's edited in such a way where it's like his psychological state is rapidly deteriorating, and it's not all that fun to watch. I mean, it is, and it's funny because I'm a ghoul, but he really works himself into a state. There is clearly an emotional significance to this, at least in Chad's mind. He sounds like he's on the verge of tears while just yelling things into the darkness.
Holy crap.
There's a bit of a time jump here where Chad has clearly gathered his composure and moved on to a different part of the prison to attempt EVP recordings. And this is, I believe, the first time they've mentioned orbs. Orbs are an old ghost hunting standard that I don't think they'd be open to accepting as evidence, but I guess it's not all that triumphant to point to a bunch of squiggly lines and then say, yep, RB spurts here.
As I suspected, this was not an orb. Often what people perceive to be an orb is really dust or a bug.
Dave was showing us earlier that they kept certain prisoners down here. Maybe the really bad ones. I mean, is there any other kind?
Look, I realize Chad's mind is gone at this point, and he's just operating on the muscle memory of a portal hunter, but that was a wild thing to say about 4 humans who were chained to a furnace to die of heat exposure.
Where 4 inmates were roasted to death.
In this room, he hears his own ragged breathing on his recorder, and confuses that for someone else, which only further sends him into this spiral of self-scaring. Anytime it's John's turn to stay in the haunted place, it's usually more chill. He maintains composure, and might record an odd noise or something, but it's more in line with what you'd expect. This time around, however, not wanting to be outdone by Chad, he appears to have some kind of genuine, near heart attack or panic attack. It's the only time one of them actually uses the panic button they carry around. And cruelly, it doesn't even work. Chad doesn't hear it, and John has to limp over to the check-in camera and tell him to come get him. This moment is both, I'd say, why this show shouldn't exist, and in a dark way, one of few moments that justify it existing. On one hand, the events of this series seem to have real concerning effects on the health of its hosts. They are not excited by the evidence they gather. They are sickened and filled with dread, and that comes across in the final product. That lack of adventure or joy. And they usually cap off the episode in a really bleak way.
I think this is a portal to hell. I think this is hell. I think we're in it right now.
But on the other hand, this is probably the most genuine they seem, and they even hug and drop the spooky editing. It actually feels unscripted for a moment. Chad really plainly admits that he's the only one who gets scared and John is the strong one, and seeing their roles reversed was really hard. By complete coincidence, I was just watching an episode of Ghost Adventures where Zach and gang visit a similar prison in Ohio, with much the same history, and the difference in production is wild. I do have to commend them for interviewing a former inmate as well as a guard. It's a much better insight into the horror of prison life, even if Zach makes funny faces during the horrendous stories he tells. He also does what Chad ends up doing and plays into the role of an authority figure to rile up ghosts. But he has a bit more of a sense of humor about it.
We control this prison, and according to Mike, they hate when you say that you have the power. Let's see what in the hell happens to us.
For me, despite being hugely disrespectful and grim, this is a huge step in humanizing the hosts and acknowledging on some level the absurdity in the act of ghost hunting. I personally, and I'd imagine many other casual ghost content enjoyers, aren't watching this kind of thing for some kind of hard science explanation or emotional resolution. It's because it's fun and a little creepy sometimes.
They consider it significant when they have 0.04 to 0.08 milligauss, and it's continually increased over the last few hours. Probably got an active portal right now.
A young man she met here who was a seaman went away. A seaman.
A man of the, you might call merchant marine today.
There are whole episodes of Ghost Adventures that are pretty much just comedy episodes. Strangely appropriate, this episode of Ghost Adventures ends with its host talking about the scientific validity of their findings. But it's centered around Zach's frustration that hauntings can't be repeated, and he has to edit down 40 hours of footage into 20 minutes of interesting TV.
They think that we get good all the time. No, because we go there for a long time and we investigate for 12 hours continuous.
This is a human thing, I understand. Whereas being rattled by fear for a hell dimension is not something that occupies my mind all that much. That's for future me to worry about.
It is so hard.
The next episode gets another tasteless location to ghost hunt out of the way, the Southern Plantation. Everyone's been there, Zach's been there. As far as minefields of bad taste, this is pretty stacked against them. But, you see, the boys have a suspicion there may be a portal to another world here because of a murder that took place. The blood from that death still stains its wooden floors, but more importantly, beneath these floorboards lies a large geode. Yet another thing that is tough for a newcomer to hear and then immediately get what these fellers are up to. And also, a nearby Native American burial ground. So I'm not liking the odds here. I feel like they're gonna fuck up eventually. I'm praying for them though. Those conditions needed to form portals seem like they'd be quite plentiful in just about any location on Earth. I mean, what do you need, really? Limestone, running water, radio frequencies, gamma radiation. There's so many things that could validate your belief. It's crazy. It's actually crazy. It's actually fucking insane. They just pile up a bunch of gizmos on the floor and one of them beeps and then it's a portal.
These are toys that you can play with. Oh, it's going up.
Nothing worth noting happens as they walk around the house during the day, so they head down to the basement with the geode. In a real Bagans-esque move, Chad sits on top of it for a while as they talk about the power that quartz crystals are believed to have. But it's not long before Chad begins to look sickly again, and he thinks the crystal is making him aggro. He can only imagine that the geode may have influenced the murder that took place here all those years ago, which is one hell of a defense. So Chad is the first to spend time on the grounds alone, and I do think think he immediately bumbles through that minefield I mentioned and sets a few of them off in a chain. I got whiplash from this rapid-fire selection of odd shit to put on TV. So for starters, the first place he heads to is the Native American burial ground. That's not always the term they use for whose burial ground that is, but that's one of those mistakes that's just going to happen in a show like this. The owners of this property claim to hear drums and chanting at night coming from this place, which sounds like something these specific guys would claim. Some shit that came out of a 1950s Tales from the Crypt comic. They set up a static camera affixed to this burial ground, which looks like this. There's like literally nothing on screen. I don't know why they bothered. Oh shit, wait, dude, look, dude, shh, shut up. Shut up. There's nothing there. Next, Chad starts an EVP session, and he starts talking to these spirits about whether or not the geode has activated a portal. And again, it's like, that's so much information for a formless entity to process. Like, I don't even know if they speak English, and you're asking them this weird, esoteric bullshit. Like, how about what's your name? Can you contact me in some way? What's your favorite color? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? These are the kind of questions he asks at the geode, and I actually like this part because Chad seems happy with his findings. He hears an EVP of a voice saying hi, and he makes the most delighted giggle. It's like the most normal thing I've seen him do. That's what I'm after, man. It's that passion for something so silly that keeps me invested in other shows. And then it's immediately dispelled.
I gotta get out of here, man.
It's like a treasure hunting, okay? And we just found a bunch of gold coins. Yes, we do show emotion because we love catching this. This is why we're here.
The rest of Chad's investigation is sort of intense. It's a tough viewing. At first, it's interesting how much he's able to sell, like, nothing happening. They don't have a bunch of dark tunnels to walk through or shadows to spook themselves with, but he seems to just be losing it. Like every variety of personal anecdotal evidence that you can't film is happening to him all at once.
I just felt like something got up right up on me.
Yeah.
No. Nah. No, get the off of me, man. Get the off of me. No. We're good, man. We're good. It is so hard. Now I feel so cold in this room. Oh my god, it's freezing in here, man. Oh my god, it's like a icebox in here. Isn't it? Isn't it?
Side note, I really appreciate him taking his shoes off in someone else's home. That's just very considerate. The last bit of EVP he tries to collect comes out of nowhere, and for all I goof on this show, this part was actually a legit bummer. Chad asks into the void a very specific question. If there is a portal here, does that mean he's closer to his dog who passed away? A dog whose name he can barely get through without becoming noticeably emotional. He loses his composure and has trouble continuing the session. And act or not, it's really affecting, especially if you've lost a dog. Like, even if he was acting here, it's a thing I empathize with.
And I did get some EVPs. I don't know what they were, you know?
When I heard him, it sounded like a dog panting to me.
John, don't tell him that. Or do, whatever. I think it does sound like he was a bit quick on the draw to validate his feelings, and Chad sees that he's doing that. Because despite being in tears, he's like, I got upset. I know that's not real.
I believe that there are spirits and ghosts and all of these things, but I have a hard time believing that my dog's with me.
When it's John's turn, I expected him to hold it together longer and then experience one significant ghostly interaction, but he goes and lays outside in the middle of a lightning storm and then heads over to the geode and is immediately behaving like he's drunk.
Alright, well... Yeah.
He just doesn't seem to know what he's doing or where he is, and I can't say I saw him pulling this card. During his walkthrough of the house, he drops a pretty good provocation line.
You want to talk? You want to drink? You want to fight?
What's better than this? Guys being spooked.
Could it be the spirit of Big Tim, who was stabbed and bludgeoned to death by his son Little Tim in this very spot?
This is a reoccurring thing throughout a lot of ghost shows that I love, and it's one of those microscopic tropes that you only pick up on when you've consumed enough of it.
Could it be the tormented spirit of a patient once confined to a cell in the steam tunnels? Or is the energy from another being manifesting through the portal right here and now?
But it's when the voiceover asks this like run-on question about the meaning or their interpretation of evidence they've collected.
Did we just capture the spirit of Roy, who suffered from giantism and has been photographed many times before? Were the spider webs that Aaron thought hit his face actually slaps from this entity? Was this some old cowboy trying to grab Aaron's flashlight, thinking it was a gun to shoot me?
Strange place to be. In a school.
In the final episode of Ghost Stalkers aired, the gang visits a 1920s-era school in Iowa, which is rumored to be teeming with violent, haunted energy. Despite this, nobody really knows why it would be haunted. Paranormal investigators flock to it, usually experiencing something unsettling, such as a red-eyed shadow man, but there is no history supporting why a shadow man would be there. This final episode was coincidentally the first episode I saw that made me seek out the rest of Ghost Stalkers, because it really is this idea peaking. It's the height of its incompetence. One of the local investigators they interview provides a clip of her and her crew using a spirit board in the school, during which she was, in her words, shoved, throwing her 6 feet across the room.
And the next thing I know, I'm 6 feet across the floor and I couldn't get up.
And I don't know if I'm qualified to dispute this clip, seeing as though it's so dark I can't make out even the geometry of it. I quite literally don't understand even where the camera is positioned, let alone the figures in the shot. So sure, I guess this woman was thrown 6 feet after the spirit board said get out. What I am sure of is that they used this clip far too many times in this episode, at least 4 times.
You can hear her get hit. You can hear her hit the ground.
It's so useless a clip that the editor tried to spruce it up with an impact edit so you can even know when the thing she is claiming happened was supposedly happening.
We had set up a spirit board. All of a sudden,
she could have said anything was going on here. Oh my god, Cindy, did you see that? I was lifted up 6 feet. The ghost juggled me with chain attacks. I was stun locked. I think I broke through a few ceilings. He hit me with a sonic boom. It may have been a sonic boom. I suppose it could also have been a Shoryuken.
Who was investigating and was violently thrown to the ground.
He wasn't around for the previous episode, but David and his hat make their return, and they explain to him that it seems like there's a portal here, but none of the environmental factors that would cause one to appear. They roll with this by introducing a new concept to test for, a human factor. Unless I've misunderstood, I think the logic behind this is that because this building was so significant in the lives of so many people, that good or bad, they are drawn to it in death. It's pretty flimsy even by ghost hunting standards. But it's the excuse needed to introduce the following gadgets. Chad will be fitted with a heart monitor and John with a brain scanner. It's got Bluetooth. These biometric devices will help them see if the school is somehow affecting them physically. I think I feel like I'm describing this incorrectly because even me, not an engineer of any sort, can see how fruitless this experiment seems. Chad's heart rate is of course higher than normal. I don't think anyone would find that surprising. John is fitted with his Konami laser scope. They walk around the building while Dave consults a tablet that tells him essentially if his brain is alert or resting. Dave does say something downright coherent here. John suggests that just because someone uses a spirit board doesn't mean that you are going to open a doorway to hell and speak to Lilith. It's all about the intent of the user. So Dave chimes in that using a spirit board is also a completely subjective experience.
It's almost entirely a human experience, and there's really no documentation other than human witnessing of it.
I was momentarily concerned that the boys were about to engage in a serious moment of self-reflection about everything they're doing here, but John successfully dodges this laser by saying that if enough people using a spirit board want a thing to happen, they can be made to do it. Not psychologically, they will think, I want the board to tell me to get out, and then a ghost hand will reach out of the void and physically move your hands to those letters and then huck you across the room like you're a bottle of Calypso Paradise Punch lemonade.
And so, is it possible that all of that collective energy of people sitting around wanting something to happen grab the energy out of the air and actually make something happen.
So yeah, it's a subjective human thing, the way we manipulate this supernatural terror in reality. Chad suddenly begins to feel sick, so sick that time seems to speed up until his heart monitor just reads error.
I'm eager to try to communicate with the spirits of the children, since I witnessed other kids dying all around me as a child.
Hey, whoa, okay. Alright, you left that part out of your origin. Chad is off the rails in this episode in particular. He is constantly seconds away from a heart attack. Yelping at every bend of the light.
I see a ball. Huh?
Lots of great shots of his features becoming so washed out that he looks like a cartoon drawing with little dots for eyes. The most manic sequence is when he goes on stage in the auditorium and starts playing a recorder and acting out funny little scenes, encouraging ghost children to join him. Yet every time he hears a distant thud of some kind, he screams a variety of bleeped obscenities.
Are there any kids who want to come up and join me on stage? Ah! Man, let's play!
This is the eternal struggle of the ghost hunter. If I've learned anything from these shows, the dichotomy between wanting to find empirical evidence and pissing yourself at ambient sound effects, goading restless spirits into making their presence known, and then booking it out of the room when they do, yelling, "Dude, run!" John's mission for his day is to try and provoke the dark spirit of the principal, but I'm surprised none of them thought to just bring in a spirit board, seeing as though they claimed it had results for other investigators. It seems a little counterintuitive for shows like this to bring up the dangers of irresponsibly using a spirit board. How, oh, you shouldn't mess with that sort of thing, you'll open up a portal, you will. But like, for the sake of research and gathering useful evidence, would you not want to do exactly that?
Next, I make my way to the library where a woman with a spirit board was once violently attacked.
Is that not what you were trying to do with Tesla coils and quartz crystals? Apparently we can open up portals and commune with the dead using something they sell at Walmart, and we're just like, what, that's too easy?
Do we have to get on the board?
Yeah.
Good old Zach. You can always count on him to do the thing you're not supposed to be doing.
Got a triaxial magnetic field meter.
What are you doing with that? What is that?
See if there's any massive fluctuations.
I don't know what any of this shit does, man. Oh, it died. Well, that sucks. It's here at the end of this journey that I realized that the cutaways to the host in the RV aren't really helpful most of the time. Most of the time, they just repeat what the other one said at the check-in camera.
Keeping my eyes on the check-in camera while John walks around.
I'm gonna be very quiet.
Why aren't they both in there? I'm sick of this A-B scenario. Let's get some co-op in the mix. I guess it's an interesting counterbalance that when John gets scared, he seems more angry that it happened than anything else. That's a response to this fear I understand. I put myself here. This is all my fault, after all. I've invented these shadows that spook me so.
As I begin a digital recording session, I catch a glimpse of something through the corner of my eye. Son of a... Dwight. You...
There is a hint of embarrassment, of shame in that, whereas Chad's fear is the fear of a believer. Chad knows what he heard. The rest of this episode is consumed by a technical issue with John's digital recorder. He keeps trying to conduct an EVP session, but the recorder refuses to record anything. After some testing in different areas of the school, he steps outside and finds that it works, then one more time on the other side of the door, where it once again doesn't record. There are any number of reasons why this could be happening, and none of them are all that interesting. It's not eerie enough to dedicate the majority of his time to, but it is fitting that this is the note the entire series went out on. Its host, alone, blown out by infrared light, preoccupied with the functionality of some kind of gizmo. In their closing thoughts, John has an incredibly strange monologue about the very nature of human existence. He offers his theory that there are gatekeepers of sorts that oversee portals to other worlds, and one of their jobs is to make sure that humanity doesn't understand the afterlife. Chad, in a rare moment of disagreement, asks,
"Why would something like that exist?"
To which John responds, "If humanity knew definitively that there were an afterlife, why would they go on living in this world?" I feel like what he thinks he's doing here is instilling some sense of wonder or dark intrigue about the quest for paranormal knowledge. But if anything, it's just a grim reflection of what many people who believe in ghosts want validated. It's like they toil away with their night vision cameras and Tesla coils in hopes of finding one thing that confirms that they get another shot at life, instead of working to better this life. The one beautiful and cruel roll of the bones that every human life is granted. Look, if you had one shot, one opportunity to seize everything you ever wanted, would you? I think the true impetus for making this video is that it hardened some beliefs I had about ghost hunting content, and the connection a non-believer can form with it. On some level, it's the same parasocial connection you make with a content creator, or a musician, or an influencer.
See ya. That's okay.
It's the reason I'll just leave a playlist of Red Letter Media videos on in the background. It's friends doing an activity that you wish you could be a part of, and a big part of that sell is, does this seem fun? And do these guys seem fun to hang out with? Shows like Ghost Adventures, and to a lesser degree Ghost Hunters, excel at this part, and with such long lifespans, it's like when you start ironically saying some cringe overused slang term so much that it just embeds itself into your lexicon. So I can have moments where I think, Zach, you're a funny guy. I kinda like this guy. And other moments where he'll do or say some insane shit that tests the limits of my friendship.
Is it like sexual?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did you get aroused?
But I just gotta laugh and say, oh, Zach, you and your ways. Ghost Stalkers really fixates on this idea within the idea of ghosts. I mean, Ghost Adventures talks about portals sometimes. It's even in the intro for the early seasons.
If this is the portal of hell, well, why don't you come up out of that ground and come and get us?
And Zach will touch on it in a softball kind of way.
Do you think that this lends to any of the activity here at the Stanley Hotel to help amplify the energy that spirits need to manifest themselves?
Definitely.
I'm not watching a show like this hoping to be convinced of some network of supernatural occurrences working in tandem beyond our perception. There is no device or readout that you could point to that's blinking or wiggling, and I'd think, oh fuck, okay, never mind, this is all real. And it's in this fixation where you lose character and personality. I still feel like I'm straining to understand its hosts, whereas the original crew of Zach, Nick, and Aaron all fell into immediately recognizable archetypes. Zach's the tough guy.
You like these tattoos?
Natural leader, hardcore horny.
That wants to bring out your inner whore. So unless you're going to be prostituting for the spirits.
Nick is more soft-spoken and serious, a loyal follower. He's more vulnerable to the fear of ghost hunting.
What? There's something here, Zach.
And the dynamic between him and Zach is laid out in the first episode of the show, wherein he tries to flee from what he thinks is a haunted piss trough.
I went to go take a piss.
But Zach strong-arms him and scolds him for running.
Stop running!
This sub-dom relationship continues throughout the series and likely led to him leaving the show. There are for sure a few moments where you can sense this unspoken power struggle. The meta for getting camera time on the show seem to be committing to the bit. If you feel like you're not getting representation, maybe get possessed by a demon. Maybe fall down in a funny way. And you know, I say that, but I do feel like anytime Zach gets hurt, it's genuine. A, because it looks so ungraceful, and 2, because he seems to actually be embarrassed.
I'm no engineer.
I don't want to let her know I just hit my head. No, I'm fine. I'm fine.
Whoa, dude.
That's okay.
God, that hurts so bad, dude. Stop, Aaron. Go away.
Aaron is the least serious of the three. He's the least concerned about the hard science of it all. And for the most part, dutifully plays the role of just a guy with a camera. But he may also be the most easy to scare and thus becomes the whipping boy for Zach. You'd be hard pressed to find an episode where Zach doesn't take a moment to specially devise some kind of punishing task for Aaron to attempt.
We need you, Aaron, to stay in here tonight by yourself and try and communicate with these children. What are you gonna say when you're down here by yourself sitting in that chair?
And I'd like for you to touch him or throw a piece of wood at his head.
You're gonna be here by yourself.
Steve, lock his ass in there. And we actually put him down there because that's where the kid got picked up and thrown against the wall over there to the right. I know you're heavy, so it might take a couple spirits to pick you up, okay?
Or just insult him in some regard, but he's consistently a good sport about it. I'm sure he's just happy to get more screen time than Nick.
Just in case. Machete. Something up.
In Ghost Stalkers, there's two of them. They have little to no chemistry, and I don't feel like I fully get their personalities. I can tell that Chad is emotional, easily scared or made uncomfortable, and John has a cooler demeanor. Chad has a history of acting and dresses like an actor, speaking really informally. John is clearly educated to some degree, carries himself like a high school teacher, and is more prone to wax poetic about the supernatural. I see these things, but I can't shake the feeling that these two guys are strangers. There's no levity, there's no camaraderie, it's just two co-workers solemnly going about their dreadful task and then confessing to the other how fucked up it was. But thankfully they collected a lot of scientific data. The weird thing is, I don't think this is the fault of its hosts. Well, I don't think it's Chad's fault. I think there is some invisible hand pushing the planchette away from fun and into funereal. You know how I know this? Because 2 years before this show aired, a crossover that rivals the Dark Universe was born.
He's a big friend of the GAC, Mr. Chad Lindbergh. What's up? What's up, dude? Are you ready for this?
Chad guest starred on a single episode of Ghost Adventures, and oddly enough, they also pitch him as a guy who died, in reference to all the times he died on camera. He's sold as himself, Chad Lindbergh, regular guy, the actor who got shot through a man's asshole in the remake of I Spit on Your Grave. And god damn it, he looks like he's enjoying himself. There are so many moments here where, if this were an episode of Ghost Stalkers, he'd look miserable, on the verge of tears. But look at this, he's excited. He is overjoyed anytime something creepy happens.
Check. That was crystal clear. Yeah.
Yes! That's it. That's what I'm looking for. That's the fun. Thinking you see stuff in the dark or hear voices on fuzzy recordings is fun. Genuinely trying to find scientific proof of an afterlife or collect readings of vague amorphous multiverse wormholes doesn't sound healthy and clearly isn't for both of these guys. Even the name is off-putting. You're stalking the ghosts like some kind of sick freak, some paranormal pervert.
Are there single guys out there that have some kind of a phantom fetish?
If this show had continued, I'd hope they'd realize what the real Ghost adventure was right in front of them. It's getting in an RV, hitting the road with your bros, seeing the sights, playing with toys in the dark, and coming together.
Am I sitting in a portal?